Welcome to the channel. Al Thomas, all things business. My dear friend Randy Char here. He is amazing. We've been knowing each other for almost 3 decades. And he actually sold me my first place here, a little small condo for $100,000 way back in the ancient days, in the Flintstone days. And now he's selling these high-end 10, 20, $30 million properties. And I just want to interview him today, and I want him to give you an aspect of real estate, number one, here in Vegas. And you could see the same thing in your area, but also who he is and how he got where he's gotten. Does that make sense, everybody? So pay attention. Mr. Randy Char, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself and where you started from and where you're at today, and give us an overview of real estate in Vegas.
Sure. Well, this is an absolute privilege for me to be here, Al. I've known you for, ever since I started my real estate career. Like, I've been doing this almost 30 years, and I met you in year 1. That was a privilege in itself, that I had to be, that I was able to meet you and then have all these wonderful years that you've helped guide me, give me good advice, and mostly just been a phenomenal friend. So thank you for that.
You're welcome, my friend. You're welcome. So now, I know when we first met, I pulled up to your spot in my Rolls Royce, and I got out and I bought a condo, invited you to dinner, and tell us a little bit about that, and then your story from there. What did you do?
Well, I moved out shortly after college. I came to Las Vegas, and people said, "Hey, Las Vegas, there's this potential great opportunity in real estate." I'm like, well, what does that look like? And I was able to actually start on the side of the business of development or home building, which is a different aspect than the general real estate side, where you're buying and selling individual homes for people. Instead, you're representing a developer with their homes, and you sat at a model home site. And so it's almost like a retail site. So just imagine you're going into whatever, the Armani store, or you're going to a watch store or a Ferrari outlet or whatever. It's kind of like that type of aspect of business for those that weren't familiar. Anyways, I represented a builder. They sold affordable townhomes in a very, very good location in Summerlin. And Al pulls up in his Rolls. Obviously, he's not exactly the demographic buyer that I was used to seeing at that spot. So I said, okay, this should be fun. He comes in, he says, after he takes a look, yeah, I'm interested, come to dinner, we'll talk about it. Came over to dinner. He said, okay, I'll buy that home. Is the one next door available? He said, yeah. He said, well, I'll buy that one too. And I said, are you gonna live in this? He's like, maybe. What I later learned is that one of Al's strengths in real estate is that he creates a lot of his wealth, not just by making smart real estate decisions, but ones that cash flow, right? You're a strong believer in buying homes for cash flow. And this was no exception 30 years ago or something. So I learned that early. I'm like, this is why he's buying it. And I learned to adopt that. In fact, my story is that I wanted to be, I wanted to be a millionaire in my 20s. I started from, ground zero, and I came out here in 95, and most, let's say, people, my peers of my age, they wanted, as soon as they got their first taste of success, they go rent a nice Beamer or something like that, or lease it. Not me. I wanted to become wealthy because I saw the likes of other people, and luckily had good mentors and people that led by good example. I didn't have the ego of saying I have to, be flashy and this and that. I just wanted to get ahead. And that's what a lot of people do, frankly, when they came to Vegas during the time. It was like the new world. They came over here to try to make something of themselves, and a lot of that was, their interactions with other people. So I remember I bought a house, put $5,000 down, and in real estate, when you put $5,000 down, maybe 5% for round numbers, and it's a $100,000 property, if it goes up $5,000 next year, how much did your investment go up?
Double.
100%, right? Even though it went up 5%. And if using that numbers, if those compound, your initial investment can, grow pretty rapidly. Well, I learned I could do that, and then, wow, you can rent these properties. And so I'd buy one, I'd move, buy another one as investment, I'd leave it. And then in this whole new game, what was happening, because Vegas was developing, you could put a deposit on something. And if you put a deposit on something and it wasn't going to be built for a year, then you get to run up all that equity.
Yes.
And so by the time I was in 5 years, I think I was on to like 12 properties, and I was still driving this I drove this Honda Prelude, and it had like a modified exhaust because it was so loud. It had like a little mini steering wheel. But I was like, okay, I'm cool with this car.
I'm saying
because I bought I think it was my 10th house, and finally I said, I think I want to splurge. And I remember walking into into Beverly Hills. And I said, where do people buy cars and then like turn them back in like after a couple months because they're done with their money? I'm like, Beverly Hills. So I went to Beverly Hills. Remember, went to the Porsche dealership, won a convertible Porsche. And the guy looked at me, and I was like 29 at the time, but I looked like 17.
Yeah, you're still like, yeah.
So I said, hey, I wrote a check. I'm like, show this to your boss. I'm either buying this cash and I'm driving out of here. I'm going to hop back on a plane and fly back to Vegas. So we made a deal, and that was kind of where I first remember splurging, but not until I built.
You know, I didn't realize that. You know what's so funny? My Rolls Royce that you met me in, I bought that in LA. And I paid cash for it. I never knew that story. So I walked in the dealership in Beverly Hills, and I got a Rolls Royce. They had a two-tone Rolls Royce there. And here's what I want. And the guy says, we'll take it. And as long as you go back to Nevada, because you can register in Nevada, be less on you as far as registration. And I said, that's what I'm going. I'm going right home back to Nevada in it right now. I loved it. I didn't know that story.
Yeah, well, there you go.
So let me ask you a question in front of the audience here, because you said something, you want to be a millionaire. So what age were you when you did finally became a millionaire?
It was right before I was 30.
Okay.
And then, you know, my goal at the time was, what was the next number I wanted to be? And that number was based upon if I could spin off the income from the net worth or basis that I had that could maintain the current lifestyle I had. So for example,
have your assets pay for your lifestyle.
Exactly. So that was my goal, was to have the assets pay for my lifestyle. And it took me about 2.5, 3 years, because that was the boom that really took off in Vegas. So I was a fortunate beneficiary of an extremely hot market at the time period where I was like literally flying all over the country. I was putting checks down for everything from golf course communities, lots in Texas and Florida and Utah and wherever else. Well, that was all fine and dandy until I forgot one of the principles, which was you need enough cash flow to cover those assets. I was buying them based on appreciation, which was a mistake at the time that I learned, had a hard lesson from, because I learned that I lost a lot of that. But I figured when I was 32, I had no dependents, you know, and I didn't really want to accept more income for tax reasons. I did it. But that was one thing that I learned, is that when things come too far, too fast, you got to be careful, and you start safeguarding. Now, fortunately, I've had another run or two at it since then.
Yes.
So hopefully you've corrected and learned from those things. But at the time, I thought my goal was to retire my first retirement was going to be when I was about 33, 34. And I did. But the problem was that I got something in my mind that I had to have a beach house in Newport Beach. And that funding required a lot more than where I was in Vegas. And that's what kind of ruined it all.
Well, not a bad way to go.
So I got good practice. There
Okay.
So I did it again and continued. But I was always been one of those in real estate. And this is really in my DNA. Real estate is what I know and what I've internalized and what I've shared with others to help create wealth, and also to help mentor other people to be successful in our career. We have a very high failure rate. 90% of the people are out of this business after they get licensed within the first 2 years.
You know,
90%.
Wow, 90% out of real estate get licensed or out of the business. It's like never marketing. 90% is going there too as well. I don't know what it is, but people are people. But go ahead. Why do you think? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And half the people that have a license have done 1 or 0 transactions. So what's happening in our industry, it's skewed that the majority of the activity is really generated by the few. By the few. But in my career, one of the things I emphasized, I really had a general curiosity to learn everything that I could about the business. So I was on the developer side, working for top 10 national home builders. I tried to grow a career in real estate that way and moving through the ranks, and the advantages of learning not just how to buy and sell a home, but what's involved in the purchasing of the land, the product, those type of things are valuable. Then being able to represent potentially builders in their business and having your own boutique real estate company where, you know, I bought and sold real estate on the resale side, finally to where I'm arrived now, running, you know, one of the highest regarded international real estate brands.
Very highly regarded, yeah.
So I've been able to see a lot of the aspects of real estate and been fortunate to grow the ups and the downs with Vegas, but this is an exciting city to be part of that conversation.
It's very exciting, and to see your growth from going into the development and then going to vice president and then going to your boutique and now where you arrive today, and it's with an international company like this. What do you see the market in? Here we're in 2024. What do you see the market in the high-end real estate here the rest of 2024? What would you say?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. We have essentially two markets that we're looking at. This is a city where the median price of a home is pretty average if you just took across the country. Mm-hmm. The median price of a home here is roughly $500,000, just round numbers. Mm-hmm. But the upscale or luxury segment is a totally different animal. And think about how these two segments work in this town. It can be misleading. And when people ask, well, how's the market doing? I always ask, well, what market are we talking about? And for example, different markets move and are sensitive to different things. So for example, for a median price home, you have to pay attention to what are people's wages and earnings relative to the payment that they can afford. And that's a function largely of interest rates, right? And the price of the home. And prices of the home have moved quite a bit. On the upper end, we're finding that the great majority of, especially not just one, but maybe over $2 million homes are being purchased cash right now. Mm-hmm. People are wealthy okay, let me just say it this way. The wealthy are wealthy.
Oh yeah.
And they have the means, and you combine that with the consumer confidence that's pretty high overall, and that's creating quite a marketplace and a demand in the high-end market. And also inventory levels are generally lower. So when inventories are lower, demand is high, and then you have the influx of other external factors like people moving here for tax reasons. That's been obvious. In the past, California moved here to be more affordable. But it was a lot of it was like retirement, or people just trying to make a better living because they were having a hard time making ends meet and they would struggle less being here. But now we're seeing people come as a tax shelter, or, I got off the phone 30 minutes ago with someone that has a place in Park City and Cabo, and this is going to be their primary residence, but they are multiple residence owners. Yeah. So that segment of the market is moving. I'm very encouraged by what is going on in the city for the future. As far as kind of the eye can see right now, Vegas has a very bright outlook. Yeah. We continue to evolve with professional sports. Our economy is becoming more diverse.
Yes, it is.
There's actually, believe it or not, a tech movement. I don't know if you heard, but there's the Sony, the movie studios, $2 billion movie studios are moving here. So that's going to potentially employ thousands of people. F1 coming in, Super Bowl, that brought billions of dollars into the economy and fusing it, and just the overall lifestyle that just keeps improving as we continue to grow. It's all extremely exciting.
Not only that, we have a lot of Hollywood actors that have sold their house in Hollywood and moved here. Recently, which you'll hear in the papers. You're talking about the wealthy people. I was reading the Forbes the Forbes just came out, the Forbes top 200 wealthiest people around the world. Now it's the top 200, and I couldn't believe it. Two of my billionaire mentors are not even in there. It's so funny to me. It's not funny, but it is funny, but it isn't funny for them either. Because on the lower ranks of the billionaires in the Forbes this year of 2024, the cutoff at the bottom of the top 200, the cutoff was 10.8 billion. So if you're under 10.8 billion, you didn't even make the magazine. I'm sitting there going like, oh my God. You have to make 10.8 billion to even get in it. Before I remember 1 billion, 2 billion, 3 billion, 4 billion, but no, 10.8 billion.
And that's a pretty big difference. If you took the top 1% of incomes, and depending on, where you're looking at for this information, top 1% of income is plus or minus 800,000. And the top 1% of net worth is 10, 12 million, which is still, a tremendous amount of wealth, right? Or earnings. And just to be able to see that the market for the high-end segment of the market, which is what we specialize in. We don't only serve, by the way, the wealthy. It's the experience that we're after, making sure it's not the price point. But that being said, we lean towards a more upscale client. And so our job is to really know what's going on in the real estate market with these segments And typically we are dealing with people that are, anywhere from, the millions or the multi-millions all the way into the billionaires.
Yeah. Well, that's what this company represents, the high 1% of the one percenters, which is a different clientele. And to be able to get in that echelon like you have done so successfully, it doesn't surprise me, because every step of your way, you've always been the number one of the number one or one percenters. So, all I can say is keep going what you're doing, and congratulations. And, I know you have your pulse on the what's happening here in Las Vegas, and can see what's going on and what's happening here.
Yeah.
If they're in closing here, if somebody's out here looking at real estate, thinking about getting in the industry, what would you say to a person? And then maybe what would you say to a veteran who's been doing real estate? And maybe.
You mean in terms of a career, or in terms
career.
Of buying and selling real estate?
As a career.
As a career, okay. As a career, again, this is a business where it has a low barrier to entry. You really just have to get a license. In fact, I don't even know how much you really truly learn about the business by getting your license and doing the schooling. So it's a piece of paper that gets you that. And what's interesting, the very first day you work in real estate, I'm not saying it's right, but you have the ability to sell a very high-end home. It's possible, right? But the amount of skill set and time, you have to be patient with this business, because again, the failure rate is so high. I really highly recommend that if you are entering the business, to find a mentor or a team and get the exposure to the transactions, because to the consumer, I think there's a lot of misinformation about what we do as an industry. In fact, there's been a big lawsuit for NAR, and a lot of that comes around the transparency on what the value that we create for our clients. It's unclear to some, because everybody can go to Zillow and look at homes and they think they're, an expert, but there's so many aspects between the paperwork, between the negotiation, between the inspections. There's a lot of components to real estate that take time to learn. So you need to learn them, and you need to be patient with the business, because to get that consumer base in that sphere of influence that's near you to trust and transact with you, it just takes time. That's
amazing what you said. You said time, patience, and he said, what I really, really like, skill set. You got to have the skill set. And like you said, anybody could sell an expensive home on the first day, but can they? They may have the skill set, but over time you develop that skill set. How many years have you been involved with real estate now? What you say?
So,
my dear friend.
I started when I was 11. No, I'm just kidding. So I'm coming up on 30 years of real estate that I've been licensed here in Las Vegas. And again, many different facets of real estate. And one of the things that I wanted to emphasize is that mentorship is so important. And like in life and everything, Al, you've been a wonderful mentor to me, and thank you so much for everything that you've done. For me, it's about paying it forward and helping other people become successful. And in a community like Sotheby's, we really don't hire new agents here, because most people here are dealing with the more sophisticated clientele. But they come here to level up, and my job is to help them achieve their goals once they've already proven themselves to be successful, and they want to move forward and advance their career further.
Wow. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here from the top. And when I say the top, I mean the top. Like I say, they don't take on any agents. They have to take on people who are experienced, but also the clientele is clientele that know what they want. They got the money to write a check and make it good. Like when he bought his brand new car in LA, wrote a check. So with that said, Randy, thank you so much. May God continue to bless you with great success. But you've always been a first class kind of guy. Always thank you for everything you've done. Folks, I want to thank Randy, and I want to thank you folks for watching this. I hope it blessed you to get some ideas. Number one, better your skill set. Number two, anybody can do if they choose to, stick in there. What you're looking at, what you're hearing from is 30 years experience. And one of the things I tell people when you buy a book, let's say Randy wrote a book, okay? I mean, think about it. For $20, you can get his 30-year experience on what he's done to become where he's at. Isn't that worth it? So that's why I'm a big encourager on buying books about things, people, places, things you want to go, because you can learn a lot from other people's experiences over a month's time of reading a book. So once again, thank you so much. God bless everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Remember, hit the subscribe button, the notification button. Share this out with 3 or 4 friends. And anybody who's in real estate or going in real estate, everyone should watch this, because you're going to get a lot out of it. Take care. God bless. Have a wonderful day.